everyone to get set up, and then we're going to go ahead with our webinar. Okay, welcome everyone. We're going to start our webinar on avoiding burnout, extremely needed topic in these times. I'm very excited. We have an amazing lineup for you here. Just so everyone knows, the event is being recorded and you will get a copy of the link to access it after. So if you miss anything, don't worry. You don't have to rush and write down all your notes. It will be there if you want to look back on it or share. For those of you that don't know, this webinar is presented by Women in Leadership Foundation. If you haven't looked us up already, please do. Join our newsletter. We have tons of free events national-wide. Our agenda today is going to start with some wellness tips that we could all use to get us all relaxed. It is the end of the day, so grab your tea, your wine, whatever you have at home, and let's get that going. And then we're going to have our main event workshop facilitated by Charmaine. And then we're going to wrap it up with some reflective and more wellness strategies. And then Q&A will be at the very end. So if you have any questions that come up while anyone's speaking, feel free to pop them in the Q&A box or the chat, but we'll circle back to them at the end. So you won't be forgotten, but we're just going to wrap up with Q&A. So our first up is Carrie, our amazing RMT, who's going to take us through some wellness tips to get us started. Carrie, you can go ahead.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me here. I'm really excited about this event. Thank you to the Women in Leadership Foundation for hosting and asking. I'm really excited to hear the others speak as well. So yeah, I'm just going to get right to it here. So just a little about me. I've been a registered massage therapist for over 10 years and also a clinic owner for just about 8. This is such an important topic to discuss. I've definitely had my own personal journey with dealing with different levels of burnout over my career. So resources are just such amazing tools to get through it and to the other side. So you're all definitely in the right place here. So my top 3 self-care strategies. First, I'm going to talk about hydration. Second is finding healthy outlets to process how you're feeling. And then the third one is just bringing more movement into our day-to-day lives. So first up, I'll talk about hydration. So I never really thought to really focus on my water intake. But now that I do, and I drink at least 2 liters of water a day, I can honestly say that it's seriously a game changer. So when you're hydrated, it just takes pressure off of your internal systems. So you're just going to have an increase in energy, circulation, oxygen, which is super important. And that's just going to help you feel more light, more focused, and more clear-headed. So when we're dehydrated, you're more likely to feel tightness, muscular pain. You're going to maybe get more tension headaches, and it just makes it really a lot more challenging to focus and stay alert. So with the water intake, I know drinking water all day is not the most super exciting thing in the world. So what I like to do is just mix it up with different vessels throughout the day. So I have my favorite water bottle when I go to work. And when I'm at home, I have my canteen here that tells me like how many ounces I've had in a day. So if I take down 2 of these in a day, then I know that I've had my base amount and I'm going to feel good. And then in the evenings, I mean, it's great to mix it up. I don't know why, but just like drinking water out of a wine glass just makes everything feel more special, especially if you have a little like bubbly water. Sometimes obviously it's totally full of wine, but other times, you know, I like to mix it up. But definitely, yeah, get your water intake and just find fun ways to like mix it up for yourself. So second, I'm going to talk about the finding healthy outlets to process how you're feeling. So my waves of burnout did have a lot to do with some like unconscious issues that I was dealing with as well. So one of them was like not putting myself first. People pleasing for me was a big one in my business, especially. And I was also lacking kind of more stronger boundaries. So these all became triggers and cycles that I really needed to learn from. So what I did initially was I reached out to a therapist for support. And then I found a safe, non-judgmental space where I could just kind of explore those underlying issues and talk about my challenges as a business owner. I really learned how to advocate for myself, which was huge. And just building better boundaries and self-worth is really important. And that's kind of where I started how to know what a true self-care practice really meant. For me too, when I was kind of in a more burned out state, I was dealing with kind of more digestive problems and things like that. So first I reached out to a holistic nutritionist. And then after that, I actually found an incredible naturopath that was seriously a game changer. So I'm really excited to hear more about what Nico has to say later. So I started to learn about different food sensitivities that were kind of like making me feel off through the day. I was having pretty big sugar spikes and drops that were really just making me feel really fatigued. And I also learned how to like build a strategy as to how to like properly fuel my body, which is so important as a massage therapist because I'm really physical all day, and I also have to engage with clientele and answer questions and things like that. So all really helpful things to just reach out for. Obviously, I'm going to recommend massage therapy as a great tool for self-care. It's just such an incredible tool to put like much needed energy back into your body. And it just gives you the release to like break down tension issues, deal with postural strains, things like that. So you're never going to regret a massage. I can guarantee it. At this point, I could probably say that I'm at my most healthiest and grounded, especially as a business owner, which is incredible because in the beginning it was quite a bumpy road. So just know that you can get through it and just learn so much by reaching out. So the last thing I'm going to talk about, so bringing more movement into our day-to-day lives. So this is going to help keep symptoms like tension and pain away. And it's also important to offset these like repetitive strain issues that everybody deals with on a day-to-day. It's just inevitable, especially with work. We're always doing the same kind of motions, sitting, all those things. They all kind of add up. So especially for work from home people, this is such a great opportunity right now to do things differently and just take advantage of the opportunity of being more able to kind of get up and move and just create a healthier routine for yourself. Something I do recommend is setting a timer on your phone for at least an hour to get up through your workday so you can stand up, move away from your computer, drink some water, and then do some mobility exercises, which I'm actually going to go through with you. Now I'm going to stand up and I'm just going to show you some stretches and mobilization exercises. So if you want to join along, please do. I'm just going to adjust my computer here so you can see what I'm doing. Sorry, I just have a couple of books here. I just need to move. Okay, the first thing I'm going to go through is actually a standing child's pose. So it's pretty similar to a regular child's pose, but I just modified it a bit because I find for a lot of people, like the idea of getting down on the floor, like this is just not something you want to kind of throw into your day-to-day or when you're on a break from work. So you can easily do this at like a desk, a countertop. I'm at my kitchen table here. I'm just going to show you my hands. Okay, so if you want to follow along, just bring your hands onto the table, and then you're just going to walk your hips back while you hinge forward from the hips. And then basically you're just going to do like a regular child's pose, start to pull back, bend your knees here so you have some nice movement, let your head and neck relax, and then you can really just get a nice stretch through your upper body and through those postural muscles. So that's the first part. Second part is what I really recommend for anyone that's kind of experiencing side body tension. So you're just gonna walk your fingertips to the side and then sit into a nice side body stretch. That's gonna open up your rotator cuff and your ribs. And then you can just mobilize the shoulder a little bit, come back to child's pose, stretch back again, bend the knees, nice stretch, great. And then make sure you do both sides. Okay, so next I'm just gonna show you a neck stretch. So if you wanna follow along with me again, so you're just gonna bring your ear towards the opposite shoulder and then bring your hand around to increase that stretch. You'll feel a nice pull between the neck. And this is gonna open up the upper back as well. So if you can hold the stretch for about 15 to 30 seconds, that's just what we recommend to get kind of more longevity out of your stretch and to like change the muscular tissue for a longer period. So after you've done this, I'm gonna get you to release. You're gonna rotate, kind of bring your chin towards the armpit area, and then use your hand again to find a nice sweet stretch right at the top of the neck there, which is a common area for like tension headache kind of trigger. And again, hold for 15 to 30 seconds. And then always make sure you do both sides, okay? All right, so next I'm actually going to talk about some postural reset exercises that also work as strengthening exercises for the postural muscles, which is so important so we can like bring our backs and our postures kind of posteriorly and take the pressure off the chest and the front of the body. So I'm just going to get you to put one foot in front of the other so you can kind of counteract your weight. Bring your arms up above your head, and then we're just going to come down and squeeze the shoulder blades together. So arms up and squeeze. So you really want to feel a nice contraction between the shoulder blades, and that's just going to waken up your postural muscles, and you're going to start feeling some nice warmth through there. Okay, so second exercise is going to be a rear fly. So I'm going to get you to hold your core nice and tight. You're going to hinge forward from the hip. And what I mean by hinge is just move from the hip and just make sure you keep your back nice and flat. So, okay, so hands are going to go together, and then we're just going to kind of do a superwoman here. Arms back, squeeze the shoulder blades together. Okay, really wake up those postural muscles. Squeezing the shoulder blades together. Okay, so once you get good at this, you can even add like a 3 to 5 pound weight if you really want to kind of bring it to the next level. Okay, I'm just going to do a couple more. And last one. Okay, so this next one is going to be a spinal twist. So this is just going to give you way more mobility throughout the day and just kind of shake things up and get your spine moving. So arms just come up to 90 degrees, and then we're just going to gently kind of shift back and forth through the spine. So you might actually feel an adjustment with this, which is great, but it's definitely not the goal. So if it happens naturally, that's all good, but don't try to force anything. And if you feel like one side's a little tighter than the other, then you're just going to kind of gently do a couple more reps on that side and back and forth. Okay? So the next one I'm going to talk about is to kind of open up the hips and to kind of stretch the hamstrings and the quads a little bit. So you're just going to bring your knee up towards your chest and then squeeze at the top. So knee to chest and squeeze. Okay, so you'll feel a nice kind of stretch in the glutes, and it's a great way to activate the core as well. Okay, I'm just going to do a couple more. Awesome. Okay, so the final thing I want to show you, which is super important for anybody that sits at a desk. So when we're in a sitting position with our knees bent like that, then what actually happens is the quads are, the muscles in the front of the legs are actually being overstretched, and then the hamstrings in the back of the legs are actually being shortened. So that's where we kind of run into issues with like low back pain, sometimes sciatica, things like that. So it's really important to open up your hamstrings. So I'm just going to show you a nice little stretch for that. So I'm just going to get you to point your toe up. Sorry, I don't know if everyone could see me. I'm just going to move this up a little bit so you can kind of see my legs here. Okay, so point your toe up towards the ceiling. You'll feel a nice stretch kind of in the back of the calves there. And then gently just push on the knee a little bit, and then you'll feel the stretch kind of go up into your hamstrings there. So you can hold there, or you can kind of make it more of like a mobilization where you move a little quicker, kind of like a runner's lunge, and stretch, and stretch. Okay. Oh, another way you can do it too, actually, is if you want to just grab a chair so you can lift your leg, and then you can just bring your leg up, have a little bit of a bend at the knee, and then just gently push forward. And then you're going to feel a nice opening in the hamstrings. Okay, just make sure you're balanced or have something to hang on to if you're feeling like you're losing your balance a bit there. Okay, great. So that's it for me, actually. I think I'm done here. Thanks for listening, and I hope those stretches were helpful. And if you have any questions, feel free to shoot me an email and we can chat later. Otherwise, I guess I'll hand it off to the next speaker.
Thank you so much, Carrie. That was great. This standing child's pose is a game changer.
It's kind of my favorite.
I had never thought of such a thing. I don't know why.
Oh, good. Yeah, that's awesome.
That is fantastic. And if anyone lives in Vancouver, it is Therapy Health Studio, right?
It is, yeah. Thank you for the shout out.
Absolutely. And I will try to set an alarm tomorrow to remind me to stand up.
Right on. That's awesome.
Wonderful. And drink my water.
Always.
Oh, thanks again, Carrie. If anyone has any questions, we will answer them at the end in our Q&A. Feel free to pop them in though, and we'll get to them at the end. Okay, we are going to move on to our main facilitator, Charmaine. I've had the pleasure of being to a few of Charmaine's past workshops through WIL. And if you haven't met her, well, you are in for a treat tonight. If you want someone that will make you just feel all around awesome, and is an expert in conflict resolution, resilience, and many things coming out of difficult conversations, she is here to give it all to you. The bio is up on the screen. Please take a read. Please look her up. There is way more here than I can go over in an intro. So many amazing things. I will let her take it away for now, and I'm sure there'll be more to talk about after. Welcome, Charmaine.
Thank you. And Carrie, I just loved the exercises and what you said about setting that timer and getting up to move. That was a big eye opener for me when I bought a Fitbit, because my wrist would vibrate every 50 minutes. And I'm thinking, what is going on? I've got no appointment. I was the last of the party to figure it out. And when I started tracking how quickly a day can go by without me leaving my chair. So the cell phone timer, however you do it, that is such a powerful tip. And I'm going to try the water in the wine glass. I like that. So thank you for that, Carrie. So we're going to talk about preventing burnout. And this is a topic that I am very passionate about for a number of reasons. Before I put on some slides to take you through the content, we're going to have some interaction here. So I encourage you to participate in the chat box. We're going to do a bit of a brainstorming exercise using an activity called a Jamboard, which I will let you know about then. And I really welcome your full participation. Just to give you a sense of burnout, because I too, as Carrie said, that she's had some experiences around that. My first experience around burnout was many, many years ago when I was in my 20s, and I was a correctional officer. I worked in a jail system. And I don't think I even really knew what burnout was, but I knew that something was not quite right with me, and my tolerance level was going down. My stress level was high. It was the first time ever that I had experienced significant sleeping issues. And that was the alarm for me that something needed attention. And I had some great advice, and I'm going to share one tip right out the door. I was 22 years old, And my mentor, his name was John. He worked with me in a young offender facility, and I was not doing a great job at setting boundaries. Carrie talked about boundaries, and sometimes in a jail, not sometimes, a lot of times in a jail system, the inmates test you and push you verbally, and that was happening. And it felt like everything was hitting me, like the name calling, the insults, and it was just affecting me. And John said to me, Charmaine, you need to deal with this. And he said, I want you to picture yourself wearing a suit of Teflon. Like, that's an attractive outfit. A suit of Teflon. And then I got it. He said, you need to pick and choose what you let touch you and what you let slide off. And that was so powerful, because I learned that I could manage and cope differently in the moment as a strategy of reducing burnout. So that has never left me. It was one of the best tips. And I even got to practice it today. So I was in a couple of meetings that were fast moving and exciting and a little bit edgy at times. And I just thought, suit of Teflon, deep breath, and it all slid off. And what happens is sometimes we glom on to what is happening in the moment, and it impacts our ability to cope in the moment. So let's put some slides up. Let's talk about preventing burnout and why this is so important, and what are some practical skills and tips that we can use to not only bust burnout, but also move into resilience, because it really is a process. I have a starting off question for you. Here you go. In the chat box, think of a song title or a movie title. And if it's too late in the day and you can't think of one, make it up. I'm good with that. What song title or movie title would describe the past year for you? So if you can't think of one, make it up. Oh, I see somebody coming in already. The orange chat is starting to buzz. So song title or a movie title that describes the last year. I Will Survive. Hey, that's awesome. I Will Survive. Does anyone want to sing that? No. I Will Survive, Contagion, Groundhog Day. What else have you got? All by Myself. This is great. Waiting to Exhale. Anyone else got one? Let It Go. And Slow Down, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. This is awesome. In the End of the World as We Know It. Toxic by Britney. Here we go. I think we should have a sing song at the end of this. That'll reduce some stress. So the reason I wanted to do that exercise is it gets us thinking creatively. And one of the first things to go in a workplace when stress is high, and you've all seen this, one of the first things to go is humor. And humor can carry us through a lot. So I wanted to start off with something that we'd have a bit of fun with. Later, if you want to have a sing song, we totally can. So I love to think about burnout as this process. It just kind of doesn't happen overnight, although we might feel like it does. But there's really a process. And a lot of times right now in this last year, 14 months, people are saying that the risk of burnout is feeling high for them. Their resilience is feeling low. And one of the reasons is because look at the amount of change that we have had in the last while. Some of us are working from home. Some of us work from home now and go into the office. Our team might look different. There might be, teams that used to work together that aren't seeing each other. I just was on a Zoom call yesterday with some corporate clients, and I asked them how it was going. I said, how are things going? And one of them said, I miss my colleagues so much. Like, I just miss them. She hasn't seen them for 14 months. They haven't gone back to the office. And so it's not about necessarily always feeling disconnected. Sometimes we just really miss people. There's been a lot of change that we've had to handle. A lot of people saying they've put weight on, the COVID spread as they refer to it. So there's a lot of change in our life. And here's how I want you to think about change. And this can apply at any time, not just as we look at burnout. This applies to workplace change in our family. I think of it sort of like a train. So if you imagine a train and you're going on a journey. So the train pulls up, it's on the platform, and there's going to be people, maybe it's you, that just gets on that train. I don't know where we're going. I don't know what journey's going to be like, but I'm on the train. I'm going to sit up front by the conductor. So almost like they want to be driving the change or partially leading it. And then you've got some folks in teams and workplaces in our families that get on the train. They've got their ticket. They hop on the train. They sit right up by the front, but not quite where the conductor is, but they're on the train. And then you've got folks that get on the train and they kind of sit halfway between the front and the back, but they're on the train, little hesitant, but they're there. Then we've got some folks who hop on the train and they sit close to the door, or they stand up and hold onto the pole. Then we've got some folks that they've bought their ticket, 1 foot on the platform, 1 foot in the door, not quite sure. And someone says, come on. And then they come in. And then there's some people still at the ticket booth. And then there's some people who haven't decided if they're going to buy their ticket. Change is like that train. So when you don't have to answer this in the chat box, but when you think about this train of change, where would you see yourself right now? And have you seen yourself in some of these different moments? And the reason I share this story is because we all cope differently with life's challenges. We all cope differently with change. We all cope differently with disappointments. And one of the other learnings that I had from Mr. John Bromley many years ago, not only did he teach me about the suit of Teflon, he said, you know, Charmaine, gotta be honest. He said, sometimes the way we see the problem is the problem. Took me a long time, like several years, to kind of really understand what he meant. Sometimes the way we look at something is the problem, and the way that we're seeing it is actually contributing to our stress level. All right, so we're going to do what's called a Jamboard time. And the question we're going to answer, I'll explain Jamboard in just a moment. The question we're going to answer is, what are you doing right now to either bust burnout or boost your resilience? So this is kind of like a brainstorming, just like if we were in the room together with a flip chart and I was up there with my markers writing all your amazing answers down. That's what a Jamboard is. You're going to be able to put sticky notes virtually on a flip chart. So let me just bring up the screen, and I'm going to put a link in the chat box. Okay, and the link will take you to a Google file. There we go. So it should take you to the Jamboard, and it'll probably name you. Yes, the anonymous giraffe is here. Who else do we have? I don't know why Google does this, but, and then we have the chameleon. We've got the chinchilla. I don't even know what that word is. And then we've got the bat and 23 others. So here's what you do. Over on the left side, you can see a whole bunch of things. We're going to go down to that fourth one that looks like a sticky note. You can pick the sticky note and you can write your tips. So one of the things that I'm doing to bust burnout and boost my resilience is actually a tip that Carrie gave. I am drinking way more water, and trying to reduce my coffee. So that should give me the little, there it is, the sticky. So you can write your tips up here by the sticky here, and you can even choose a different color. So what have we got? Yoga. Oh, I love yoga with Adrienne. I could just listen to Adrienne, her voice, and then the dog. That's like total cuteness. Okay, watching this webinar to get some skills to start. There you go. There should be a prize for that one. Sleep, music, Zumba, practicing mindfulness and yoga, trail runs with my dog. There's a few things up here about dogs. I have a dog too, Toby, and he certainly gets me out. Walking on the treadmill, paying attention when it comes time to say no. Oh my gosh, how important is that? Working with a coach, awesome. Gardening, family and friends. Look at this list. This is incredible. You're writing a book here. You're writing a book here, ladies. Phoning friends to connect. This is really important. We spend a lot of time on phone and Zoom platforms right now with people around work, and a lot of people are finding they don't have those transitions in between Zoom meetings. And I love that you're putting up there connecting with family and with friends. Look at this Jamboard. So here's the cool thing is I'm going to put this Jamboard into a visual for you and get it out to Kelly and Dana to share out with all of you. This is an excellent list. Pilates, coaching, gardening, reading. Wow, this is amazing. These are all incredible things to do. And if you can't get the Jamboard working, feel free to type your comments in the chat because I'll grab those as well and I'll put them on the Jamboard. Look at this list. The ideas keep coming. This is a great, great, great list of tips. And we're going to do another Jamboard in just a few minutes. Oh, a glass of wine. Okay. Yes. And we've got the online workouts, practicing. Oh, picnics in the park. That's awesome. So these are examples of really positive ways to boost your resilience while busting the opportunity for burnout to come into your life. So thank you for participating in that. Let me just return to the slides for a moment and then we'll do another Jamboard. So it's all about perspective. The research tells us that as humans, we think about 64,000 thoughts a day or more. No wonder we are tired. We process a lot of information and we're processing information at warp speed right now. An interesting thing about Zoom and Team and all of the different online platforms is we are actually working very hard to be present. If you think about those Zoom meetings and you've got all the squares, sort of like the Brady Bunch show, and we're constantly observing, processing what we're seeing, taking it in. And yes, we do that in meetings, but it's easier for people to sort of fade into the woodwork or detach in a meeting. But on Zoom, it takes a lot of energy for people to be present. One of the things I heard that is causing some stress for people is around virtual platforms is, how did the lady explain it to me? She said she wasn't comfortable on any kind of a virtual platform. And she said, as soon as I go on to Zoom, or they actually use Teams in their business, she said, my stress level is just so high. She said, I can't stop looking at myself. I don't want to look at myself. I notice, how my face looks and my lipstick isn't even. And she said, I can't focus on anything else. And we have a rule in our workplace that you can't turn your camera off. So she said, my stress for the whole meeting is just so high. And she said, I only take in about 25% of what's going on in the conversation because my mind is elsewhere. So these are some of the other things that we are managing in our professional lives. And the other piece that I'm seeing a lot in this virtual world we're living in is that we have lost the transition time. Remember in an office when we'd go down and grab that cup of coffee and we might stop by somebody's office and knock on the door and say, hey, how was your weekend? Or we might say, how are your kids' soccer games? And then there might be a few people gathered around the outdoor of the boardroom before the meeting starts. People are describing that they're missing that. And even if they are back in the workplace, it might be different because everybody isn't there. The routines aren't the same. But the other piece that's happening is those are called transition times, that you've got those 5 minutes, or maybe you had to drive to a meeting and you've got that half an hour in a car where you can blast the music. The lack of transition times between meeting to meeting is really adding up stress for people. So one of the takeaways, I know I've given you a couple tips already, but one takeaway I would love for you to consider is, what is your transition time from meeting to meeting? If you are working virtually, what is the transition time between online meeting to online meeting? If you are in your office, how are you practicing transition times? This is really important. One of the other times that I experienced burnout was early days when I opened my business around 25 years ago. I had a near-death sailboat accident that impacted me a lot more than I thought it did, a lot more than I let myself think it did. And my stress level when I came back to work started to be quite high. My tolerance went down. And I think I was probably going down a path of burnout. And I would go from work to home, open up my briefcase, work at home till bedtime, and then go back to work super early, and the day would continue. And I started thinking, wow, these are a lot of work hours I'm putting in. And then I got to the point, this is how I knew I should start being concerned about myself. So I would take the briefcase home full of stuff and never open the briefcase, but yet I was still equally as exhausted. And my staff would laugh at me in the morning. They say, you take your briefcase home and you're coming back with your empty Tupperware still from the other day. Like, do you not open this or what? No, I don't. So they said, maybe you should just leave your briefcase here. And I realized that I had to create a transition. So the transition became, in that case, I would come home, I'd open my briefcase, take out the Tupperware or whatever I was using for lunch. I'd put the briefcase down. There was no paperwork in it. There might be a pen or something, but there was no paperwork. And as soon as the briefcase closed and the Tupperware was in the kitchen, it was like my work day is done. So we have to find ways to create transitions because perspective is everything. That sailboat accident that I had swimming for my life in the lake for hours and hours did teach me something really, really powerful around perspective and mindset. One of the things that it taught me is that what we focus on becomes bigger. And when I was swimming and sort of losing hope and worried if I was going to get through this, I noticed that my ability to swim was deeply reduced. Like I felt like I just couldn't even put my arm in front of the other. Yet when I changed my thought process and I would think, you've got to get home. You've got a dog waiting for you who needs to be fed. You've got to get home because you got to work tomorrow. You've got to get home because you've got this commitment, or you've got to get home because you just love where you live. Whatever I would put in my thought in an affirmative, positive way, I felt like I was Wonder Woman. I could honestly feel the energy come back. So in burnout and moving to resilience, what we think about shapes everything. What we think about shapes what comes out of our mouth. What we think about shapes how we show up. What we think about shapes how we cope, how we internalize or deal with things externally. It changes everything. It shapes everything. So one other quick tip out the gate is that if you're finding yourself feeling stressed, your tolerance is going down, your frustration level might be high, you're noticing something that used to be joyful for you is perhaps becoming unpleasant. These are all times to check in what's going on in your mindset. When we think about things differently, we can then change how we cope with them. Anyone feel like this? If you've ever felt like this in the last 14 months or 12 months, whatever it is, put a heck yes in the chat box. So who can relate to feeling like this? And apparently coffee does not help you feel better. I have found, Carrie will love this, I have found that water wakes me up better than coffee. So that's another reason that I've been using water. Heck yes, LOL, heck yeah, heck yes, yep. So, you know, the solution here is not going to be coffee. It's going to be some of the strategies that we start to get into. And you've already identified on the Jamboard exercise so many incredible strategies to prevent burnout. So how we show up, does it mean like we can be like this all the time? Yeah, it's going to be great. No, it doesn't. Being positive and being resilient does not mean that we have to be positive every minute of every day. It's impossible. We're human. We're feeling humans. And right now, as humans, we are probably coping at about 25% less of our typical capacity. This was something that my dear friend of mine, Dr. Gantz Ferrance, who lives in, he's in Alberta, and I was on a webinar with him one day, and he said, you know, Charmaine, right now, I think we all need to give ourselves a little bit of a break. We need to give ourselves a break because we're coping right now and showing up in the world and dealing with things with less capacity than we had a year ago or 14 months ago. And I thought that was really wise feedback. Now, if you've been in a workshop with me before, you've probably seen this picture. I show it all the time, and there's a couple of reasons why. on the left side, or my left, there's a cute little girl in a pink sweater. And this is if you were all live in the room, you'd say, oh, she's so cute. That was me at 4 years old. And I show this picture because I was painfully shy. If you were painfully shy as a child, write shy in the chat box, or, I get it, I'm with you. Or if you've parented a shy child, you'll know what I'm talking about. You can write that in the chat box too. I carried so much stress as a kid because my shyness, first of all, made me feel awkward all the time. All the time. I remember being 7 and Mom and I were riding the public transit, and I started to cry. I said to my mom, everyone's looking at me. And I love my mom, and she's a say it like it is kind of lady. And she said, Charmaine, after she gave me some loving and hugging, then she said, Charmaine, we're on a bus, sweetie. People only have a few directions to look. They can look left, and some of them will be looking your way. They can look right. Other ones will be looking your way. They can be looking at you backward and forward. And so I thought, okay. But I was still shy until grade 9. It affected my ability on how I coped with things. Conflict, disagreement, so incredibly uncomfortable and caused me so much stress. And so I had to really start learning healthy coping skills as I grew up. And I chose a job in conflict and then became a mediator, where, of course, there's a lot of stress and conflict. Then the picture on the right, I show that because that was my first Chesapeake Bay Retriever, Toby, who taught me a lot about the importance of play, not being a perfectionist, and being on purpose, and how that can absolutely reduce our stress, prevent burnout, and increase our resilience. Toby was a therapy dog, so I volunteered every Wednesday for 4 years with him in a psychiatric hospital. And I watched how this dog changed lives by simply showing up, by simply being present. And I know that when we do that as humans for each other, it has a profound impact. Now, the other reason I show this picture is because my husband, if he was here, Chris would say, why do you show that picture? My hair looks terrible. My forehead looks very tall. And like the sweater, it looks 10 sizes too big for me. What's going on? And I say, I know, but look how good my hair looks. So that's why I show that picture. And the other reason I show this picture is because part of preventing burnout, part of being resilient, is being able to have those people in your life, whether they be friends or coworkers or neighbors or family, that you can count on for support. We all need that support system. I loved that Carrie brought up that she got help years ago. Like, this is so important. I've done that as well. And I've had so many coaches that I've worked with in my life. And it's important to have our support system, because resilience is like a bank account. You have to keep putting into it for there to be something when you need it. And so Carrie's tips were amazing, because these are things that we can do every day. We can move more, we can drink more water, we can stretch, we can take care of our bodies by eating healthy, we can set healthy boundaries, and all of those will be like filling up that resilience bank account. So I'd love to just turn on the Jamboard for just a minute here. I'm just going to bring up another Jamboard, another page on the Jamboard. What I would love you to put on this Jamboard, and the same link should work. I'll put, can you see the Jamboard? No, you can't, because I didn't screen share it. There we go. What I'd love you to put on the Jamboard right now is some of the things that get in the way of resilience. So is there anything that you can see right now that gets in the way of resilience? And let me actually just put this back in the chat box for you, the link. What gets in the way of resilience? What kind of gets in the way, or what challenges our ability to cope? For me, one of the things, I'll just get us started here. One of the things that I find challenges my resilience is when I don't take breaks. I've learned when I don't take breaks, one of the things that happens is my head feels stressed, and then my body feels stressed, and then I am stressed. I kind of create that dynamic. So when I take breaks, and I have to be very purposeful, Carrie gave a great tip about using an alarm. You know, those little breaks, the 5 minutes to go fill up your water and open the front door and soak up some of that sunshine. So what else have we got? What else gets in the way? Lack of sleep. Oh, sleep is so important. I had no idea actually how sleep was so important until I had a health diagnosis in 2018. I was diagnosed with breast cancer and went through surgeries and chemo. And um, I had no idea how tired I was, I think, once I started sleeping 8 hours a day. And I felt so good at when I would sleep. I just felt like I could take on the world. It's 2 years later, I'm doing great and I still love sleep. So I have tried to make a very conscious habit of taking an approach where I make sleep a priority. And the last thing that I look at before I go to bed is something positive, either a quote that I love or pictures of my nieces and nephews doing silly things like saying hi Auntie Shar with their favorite Halloween costume on, because it makes me smile. And those are the thoughts that I think about when I sleep. I just know it affects that. Doing too much absolutely gets in the way. Oh, I love this. Get in our own way. We can be our own worst enemy. Thank you for that. Perfectionism. I'm in the club too. I am working on that. It's a lifelong process. Not saying no. And we're going to give you a tip in a minute about that. These are great. Saying yes when we wanted to say no. Yes. Thinking about the future too much. Not fueling my body with the right nutrients. So these are some of the things that get in the way. And you can keep adding to the chart. Even when I stop screen sharing, you can add to the chart. So then what do we do then is the question. So what do we do? We've talked about some tips already, and there's a few more that I'm going to dive into that we want to remember that change can be a bumpy ride, but there's things we can do to make it smoother. And so when I talk about resilience, it's about the ability to bounce forward after change, challenge, crisis, and adversity. We want to celebrate your wins, even the little wins, even the little wins. Like, hey, I didn't have to be told you're on mute once today. Now that didn't happen to me because when I came on the call today, I was on mute, but that might be a win for the day. Or I made that phone call that I was dreading. Or you know what, that squeaky drawer in the kitchen, I finally got that handled. Whatever it is, celebrate your wins, and they don't need to be big wins. Here's a little question for you, just as we go into some more strategies, and you don't have to put your answer in the chat box if you don't want to, but think of a scale from 1 to 15, or I guess on this case, 0 to 15, 0 to 16. What I'd like you to do is you can etch this in your mind or jot it down on a paper. Where would you say right now on a resilience scale you are sitting right now on today, April 22nd, 2021? Where are you right now? Then the next question is, where would you like to be in 3 months? So we're in April 22 right now. Fast forward 3 months, what number would you like to be at? And for most people, did some of you write a higher number? You don't need to share your numbers, but did some of you all look in the chat box here? Did some of you say where I want to be in 3 months is more resilient or a higher number? Anybody pick? So 7, yep. Okay. Okay, perfect. Do we have a Jamboard problem? Okay. Oh, it didn't flip over. Thank you for whoever sorted that out. Thank you for that. So the key is to think about how do we close that gap between where we are now and what our goal is around resilience. And part of it is through managing what we call the middle zone. When we think of change, when we think of doing things differently, learning new skills, coping in a new world, living in a pandemic, and dealing with stress, William Bridges talks about how we need to deal with transitions more effectively to reduce our burnout, to reduce the potential for burnout and increase the potential for resilience. And so he says what gets difficult for people is the middle zone. And you can all probably see the drawing on on the screen right now that you'll see in the green triangle, the middle zone. And he says, change doesn't start with a beginning. It actually starts with an ending. People have to end something or let go of something before something new can start. And there's been a lot of endings for people during COVID and during this pandemic. And there's been a ton of new beginnings. And some of us get stuck in that middle zone. And the middle zone is the messy zone. It's sort of like Linus. So here's the skill testing question. Who was Linus? And what cartoon was Linus from? I feel like I might have to do a prize with this, whoever gets it. Let's see the chat box. Linus. Peanuts, you got it. Okay, so I'm going to track who was first there. Chat will tell me. Perfect, that's right. Linus carried what with him? He carried a security blanket with him. So the middle zone, that triangle, green triangle, the middle zone is like Linus when his blanket is in the dryer. It's there, but it's not easily reachable. And that's what the middle zone feels like. So we've got to push through that in order to build resilience. And one way we do that is to put more emphasis on what we can control. And then next, what we can influence. That's what we want to focus on. But when we're under stress and at risk of burnout, we focus on all the things that concern us that we have zero control over, and zero control and influence over. So what can we actually control? Perhaps type that in the chat box. What can we control? It's a little tiny circle in this Stephen Covey example. What can we control? What is it you can directly control in your life? Let me see here. What can we control? Our minds, our reactions to stress and triggers, our choices, our behaviors. This is great. Absolutely great list. Absolutely. And managing our thoughts and our reactions is not always easy. Is that true? Sometimes our reactions happen faster than our brain can focus. And that's why we sometimes have to do what's called the mulligan. The mulligan is the do-over. I'm not a golfer, but I just love the term the mulligan. But it's in golf, it's the do-over. Here's 6 ways to think about things that you can do to boost resilience and bust burnout. Look at what you can control. You just gave a great list in the chat box. Look at what we can control is we can manage our emotions. We might not control them from happening because let's face it, something might make us angry, something might make us fearful, something might make us feel sad or happy. The emotion will come, but we can have some control over how we react to it or how we deal with it. We have some control over the level of compassion that we show others. But you know what? We need to show compassion to ourselves. We absolutely need to show compassion to ourselves. Another way that we can reduce burnout and promote resilience is for our own courageous growth. So that might be stepping out of our comfort zone. So I'm going to get to do us all a little exercise right now. This is going to look weird for me on Zoom, but all of you, I just want you to cross your arms in front of your chest. So here's what it looks like. Cross your arms in front of your chest. There we go. Keep them there for a minute. Now, how much work and effort and brain power did it take for you to do that? You can uncross if you want to type in the chat box. How much work did it take? Was that a really hard activity or did it feel familiar? Let me just hear from a few of you here. Let's see. Not hard, easy. Yeah, because you've done this before. It might not be comfortable, easy peasy, familiar. Yeah, you've done it before. Now, I want you now to cross your arms in front of your chest, but reverse your position. So this was my first position. So here's the deal. If you don't know how to reverse it, so try it on your own first. So this was my normal, and I'm going to reverse. So it's when the normal, whatever arm is sticking out, is the arm that's going to go down. I have to do it the other way first. There we go. Takes more thought, doesn't it? Sometimes I look down and I still think I'm in the first position. So I show you that example because that's what it feels like to step out of our comfort zone. It feels unfamiliar. It requires more thought process. We don't like how it feels, so we go back to what we know, even if what we know does not serve us. So part of courageous growth is stepping into the discomfort. Another way to build resilience at home and in workplaces is to collaborate, to ask for help, to build connection, to have human connection. I had the cutest conversation the other day. I just got to share this with you because this little guy keeps popping up every day. He lives in our neighborhood. I've never seen him until yesterday. And I'm walking the dog and he said, "Hey, lady, that's the pinkest lipstick I've ever seen." And he walks off. That was it. And I, "Thank you." And then I saw him today again and he came up. He goes, "You don't have your pink lipstick on today." And then, of course, he cuddled the dog for what seemed like forever. And I just thought those moments of connection take us away from some of the stress. And like Carrie said, we've got to resolve those issues. We've got to resolve communication breakdowns and conflict that are getting in the way. So as we pull this together, a few final tips. We've got to take time to unplug, create those transitions between meetings or between work and home, the office and home. Sometimes our office and where we go to work and travel to work. Sometimes our office is the dining room, the bedroom. And I had one lady say her office is the bathroom. I don't know how that looks on Zoom, but maybe she's got a virtual background or something. We might need to create new now. I don't call it the new normal. I call it the new now routines. Deal with little pebbles. Little stressors. Imagine a little pebble in your shoe and you're going for a walk and you walk on that little pebble, you walk on that little pebble. By the time you finish the walk, that feels like a boulder. It feels like a boulder. Little things become big if we don't deal with them. And Carrie had some of these great tips around water, eating healthy. So the challenge I want to give you before the final story is one commitment for 30 days. And you can write it down. And if you're so courageous, put it in the chat box. Something happens when we make our goal real by writing it down and putting it out there to the world. I would love you to take one activity, one step, one tip that you will commit to for busting your burnout and boosting your resilience that you'll actually do for 30 days. And I'll come back in the chat box. I'll give you some time to think about it. You might want to write it in later. But challenge yourself to think of the one commitment. You might want to write it down on a piece of paper because you might forget what your commitment is by tomorrow. But 30 days minimum is what it takes to make a new habit. And so if you can do little consistent actions every day, you will have a profound impact on your resilience. So I want to share a story about the importance of connection. This story was shared with me a few years ago, and I love telling it. A friend of mine, Lee, was helping her friend Sandra, who was going through some pretty serious health issues. And they were talking about a bucket list. Both of them had this bucket list, the things that they wanted to do while they were on the planet. And they were comparing bucket lists, and they had done some really cool things in their life. And Lee said, "You know, what's left?" And so Sandra said, "I got one more thing left." And Lee said, "What is it? I can help you. What is it?" And Sandra said, "I want Michael Bublé to sing me a song." So a lot of us would say, "What? I don't even know Michael Bublé. How do you phone up Michael Bublé? I don't even know anyone who knows him." But not Lee, because when Lee is challenged with something big, her default is to go into, I think, creativity. And she's a masterful lady at asking for help and getting other people involved. So she went out onto social media and said, "My friend has this wish." People started going on Twitter. I think we broke Twitter that day. So people were saying, "I don't know Michael Bublé, but I went to school with his uncle and I'm going to call his uncle." And somebody said, "I just Googled it and I happen to actually know his manager, his music manager." And I was about to pick up the phone and dial Aubrey. And my husband said, "No, Charmaine, just wait and see what happens. This is not yours to fix. Let it happen." And that night or the next day, Michael Bublé was in Hong Kong preparing for a concert, and the crowd was chanting, "Michael, Michael." And he went back in to the green room And he turned on his camera, his cell phone. And as the video said, "Hi, Sandra. It's me, Michael Bublé." You probably figured that out already. Your friend Lee contacted us. Here's your song. And he sang her song. And what I learned from that story was the power of connection. What happens when we ask for help, when we don't go at it alone, and when we are a champion for other people. Sometimes when we are a champion for other people, it also helps us be a champion for ourselves. So as my granddad would say, he wouldn't call it the middle zone, but he would say, manage what's going on. I would say bounce forward, not back. Choose what you're going to focus on. And as my granddad said, just always be kind to yourself and others. So thank you so much for being with me to talk about how to boost resilience and bust burnout.
Thank you, Charmaine. As always, so good. So many great tips. Personally, my goal is going to be to set transition times. I am terrible now that I work from home. I get off work and I just go right back to another form of screen time or don't take that wind down break.
Yes.
Right now it's sunny. Go sit outside for 5 minutes.
You can have these. These are at my desk.
Oh,
I sometimes do like
I love it.
of these, not on a Zoom call, but I'm putting them here because you can create like a little transition time. I'm actually getting muscles.
Yeah, that is perfect. And then I'm going to do my standing child's pose in my transition time. It's going to be great. And then after I'm done that, I love how you put dealing with the pebbles. Mm-hmm. I'm very easygoing. I know a lot of us are like, oh, I can deal with that later. I'll deal with that later. Wonderful. So yes, if anyone hasn't looked you up yet, please do. Go to your website, get one of your books. You have so much out there. I don't know where you find time to get all that sleep that you prioritize. It's amazing.
Thank you.
As always, a pleasure. So we are going to move on to our final presenter tonight. Nico. So we are thrilled to have Nico wrap us up here and give us some culture champion vibes. I'm thrilled. I will pass it over to you.
Awesome. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Kelly. Thank you, Women in Leadership Foundation. I am so thrilled to be invited to contribute tonight. And from the beginning, Carrie, thank you so much. So much of your contribution I resonate with. I was definitely turned off my video and did the stretches along. So thank you so much. And Charmaine, thank you for, I think, just your beautiful stories woven in. I'm excited because I'm like, okay, now I get to incorporate both of your pieces into these overlap, because I think the truth is, as humans, there's so much overlap in what works for one is going to work for another, maybe a little bit differently. So I'm here. I'm so happy to be sharing. As part of the bio is, I really am a believer that to lead well, we must be well. So I want to congratulate everyone being here this evening and investing in your leadership, investing in your personal growth and your well-being. My name is Nico, as Kelly said, and I'm honored to share tonight what I call ARC. And it's one of my approaches to managing stress and avoiding burnout. So when I was working as a people and culture leader at Sage Natural Wellness, I actually got to serve as a wellness coach for team members, and it was one of the best parts of my job. So I worked with leaders and cross-functional teams to help them elevate or sustain their personal well-being through what was one of our very high growth seasons at the company. So while this did include designing and implementing well-being and engagement strategies for very diverse teams, I found that in what was a very intense season for me as well, that it was those one-on-one moments, those one-on-one coaching conversations where those breakthroughs happened that really stood out. And in many cases, and this is where I so resonated with Charmaine and your very personalized approach to, this was my experience with burnout, and this is what I learned, and this is what I take forward. And again, with Carrie, I can so resonate with my own experience, and I will just plug my naturopath as well. So if anyone is considering naturopathy or has never reached out to a naturopath and you're experiencing some of these symptoms, that was a big game changer for me as well. So bringing back to my time at Sage, it was interesting because I found that although I wanted to be this reservoir of amazing information for people, I was constantly bringing it back to my personal experience, and actually my experience as a dance artist and touring internationally. So fun fact, I used to be a dancer, and what really stood out and what I learned through that experience and that season of my life was that I was the product. I was my craft. I was my greatest resource. And I'm here to tell each of you that no matter what it is that you do, you are your greatest resource. And so when you consider that and you get comfortable with that truth, self-care is no longer a luxury, a back burner, something you'll get to. It is a key strategy to your success in every area. So I'm going to describe ARC. I'm going to give you some actionable tasks. We're going to go through reflective practice together, and you can have some data to actually take away. And as Charmaine challenged us, is to build some action items to elevate your well-being, manage your stress, and swing your pendulum back away from burnout. So let me first describe ARC. I would call it a frontline approach to engaging reflective practice. And many of you might be familiar with reflective practice if you have any experience in teaching or even as leaders in your work and your fields. It's very, very informational, but really it can be very simple, and it can just bring incredible data and reward by simply pausing to look back. And as we know, as stress builds and builds and builds, we just start to lose sight, and we start to lose sight of what is in that sphere of control, which is such a great image. So I see reflective practice in this area, such a potent strategic method of increasing our self-awareness and increasing intentional living by really gaining insight from our past and our current situation. So I loved the stat, 64,000 thoughts a day. That is a lot. So with reflective practice, one of the keys and one of the things I'll invite you to do tonight is to actually write things down. So by pulling things out of your mind and out of your memory and out of that hamster wheel that sometimes can get the best of us, it helps us reframe and reorganize and make commitments based on the info that we see. So for leaders, I really believe that reflective practice can be the difference maker between good leaders and greatness. So let's start with an activity. If you've got a pen and paper, just take a new page and put a line right down the middle. And on the left side, write down everything that helps you recharge, de-stress, bring ease to your day, bring delight to your life. Anything goes. Just brainstorming, write it down for yourself. Relationships, those movement practices, rituals of rest, recovery, recharging. Maybe it's creativity. Maybe it's getting in nature, walking your dog, whatever it is, just write a list down. And if you trust me, just close your eyes for a minute and notice how you feel as you write down these things that bring ease and delight to your life. Notice the sensations that are coming up, even as you consider them in your mind. Okay, now open your eyes. Now we're going to move to the right-hand side. Write down all the current stressors in your life. Maybe it's working remotely, concerns around COVID-19. Maybe you're homeschooling your children and working full-time. Maybe you are the person taking Zoom calls in your bathroom. That would stress me out. So write everything down on the right side of your page. No one's going to read this. You don't have to put it in the chat tonight, so be honest with yourself. Now notice how different the sensations are in your body, even as you're writing these down. Even as your mind is processing these, just notice that you feel differently. Now let's zoom out for a minute and look at the two sides of the page. Here's your data. What action items might you take to turn up the volume on things on the left and balance out the things on the right? This is a simple example of how you can use reflective practice to manage your stress. So one of my quotes, it's not my quote, so sorry. One of the quotes I love to use in this area is, awareness is the greatest agent for change. If you're not aware of something, if you don't see it or acknowledge it in your life, how could you possibly recognize your power to change it? So the first letter in ARC stands for awareness, A. So when stress starts to overwhelm and starts to kind of steal that sense of power and control and choice that you have, through reflecting, gaining perspective, and recognizing what is in your power to change, you can make really small changes, maybe even just 1 degree of a shift in the direction of greater thriving. And this will, over time, have an immense impact on your well-being. So let's go to R, the second portion of ARC. This is rest. Now, I think it's come back from the very beginning of this evening to now. Rest is critical. Sleep is critical. And I'm super passionate about sleep and sleep hygiene. So if that's a conversation you'd like to have, or you'd like some resources, like, please reach out to me. Congratulations, Charmaine, on your sleep commitment. I honor that. And I think it's just such a huge benefit. And you know, telling other people about that, slowly, the sleep revolution will happen. But sometimes when you think of sleep, and perhaps you identify like me with one of the 3 Canadians, 1 in 3 Canadians that don't get enough sleep, don't get the 7 to 9 hours that we're supposed to a night, maybe getting those extra hours itself, it feels daunting, feels stressful. The idea of carving that out is just not possible for you. No problem. We're going to work with something just as universal, but maybe more attainable for you. There's always creative ways to find more rest. Let's look at the breath, for example. 20,000 breaths a day is the average. So if you're thinking 64,000 thoughts, it's taking up energy, thankfully your body's still taking 20,000 breaths without you needing to be consciously aware of it, just faithfully keeping you powered up. So what if you, through mindfulness, could make a small change to even less than 1% of those breaths? This could actually boost your immune system and function, help balance your hormones, and enhance your mental health. All of these things will help you manage stress and bust burnout. So by incorporating mindfulness, you really do invite rest into your day-to-day through breathing, for example. So mindful breathing is simply focusing on an inhale, focusing on an exhale. You don't have to be an expert in meditation, for example. You just have to choose to be present for 1 cycle of breath. So let's try it together. You don't have to close your eyes, but if you do, you might get an even greater benefit. We're simply going to inhale through our nose and try to take a slow, sustained exhale through our nose. So go ahead and inhale as deep as you can and exhale. Let's try one more. And if you're feeling it, on the exhale, just let a really cathartic, like, sigh or groan or yawn, whatever you have in you. Let's do one more together. Inhale. And let it out. How do you feel? I would guess that you might feel just slightly better than you did before when we were doing our autopilot breathing. So what if you, as an action item, look at your day, and similar to setting your alarm for breaks, which I love, what if you set an alarm for some breathing? What if you took 5 mindful breaths before each meal? What if you chose 5 mindful breaths before or after a Zoom call? Maybe you work in your transition time with some mindful breathing. I think you will find that that little juicy feeling of goodness you felt after taking a deep breath will exponentially grow. So now for the final component of ARC, let's talk about pandemic life and social connection. And I think this really was highlighted so wonderfully in Charmaine's presentation, so I won't repeat so much, but simply to say, yes, this pandemic has disrupted our social rhythms in such a huge way. Now, some of us are feeling overexposed, hyperconnected, all the Zoom meetings, they're in my living room, in my bathroom, in my closet, where other people are feeling lonely, isolated. Wherever you find yourself on the spectrum, just know that we were created for connection, and your human drive to connect in an authentic way with other people is real, is valid, and is critical to your well-being. There's tons of research out there to support this. But as we know, especially in the workplace, not all social networks are created equal. So we're going to do one more activity to bring us to the final component of ARC, connection. So take a new page, flip to a new page, and I want you to write your name in the middle of that blank page. We are actually going to build your circle of support through reflective practice. Okay, fun fact, I actually have trouble saying reflective practice. So as I've been practicing, I keep, muffling it, but I'm still saying it. I'm still saying it as my vulnerable leadership approach to reflective practice. Okay, so the first thing I want you to do is on the outside, on the periphery of the page, I want you to write all the people you trust. So as we talked about before, the people that are in your world that are part of your support network, family, friends, colleagues, neighbors, anyone you believe you can rely on. Write their names on the outside. Okay, you can keep writing, but the next step I want you to do is, of those people, I want you to underline those who are truly supportive. These are the people who actually listen when you talk and seek to understand you and not project their own experience. They listen without judgment, and they're not trying to fix you. Underline those people, those names. Now, the people you've just underlined, circle those who really champion you. They champion your well-being, and they will help you manage stress in healthy ways. I think we can all agree that there are unhealthy ways that we manage our stress, but these are the people who are going to support and champion your healthy management of stress. These are the people that you can really rely on to be your champion. Now, I want you to take those people that have an underline and a circle, and maybe it's still all the people you first put, but maybe it's limited now. Maybe that's 3 or 4, maybe 5 people. That's what we would call your circle of qualified support. So I want you to write those names around your name in the middle of the page. These are the people who will actually help you build resilience. These are the ones who will actually enhance your well-being and help you avoid burnout. These are the people that are going to have the courage to let you know when you're showing signs of burnout. These are the people that you can really be real with about what you're facing and whatever complex issues and those pebbles that you're looking to make sure don't become boulders in your world. So my action item for you, that's my timer saying, I've now finished my 15 minutes, guys. So thank you for letting me just wrap up. My action item for you is, how can you cultivate more connection with these qualified people? And during times of uncertainty, as we find ourselves in now, or times of stress, these people and those regular connections are going to be so critical in your well-being and success. So how can you maybe meet someone for a walk more regularly, book a recurring meeting, speak to a colleague more openly about work, celebrating wins and challenges, maybe connecting with a coach or a mentor for more regular conversations. But look at your group and see if you can actually commit to a more regular connection for your greater benefit. So as you consider that action item, Rachel's going to help me and put in some resources and ways that we can stay connected, some books, some things that have helped me in my own personal wellness journey. And I want to congratulate you. We went through ARC, awareness, rest, connection. And yes, there are so many other things that are going to support your well-being, and I invite you to explore that. But I really do feel like these are the areas that can be your first point of contact and the first things that can really make big changes. So through this practice, you've already identified some actionable strategies, and I hope that they contribute to your well-being even in the coming days and weeks. So thank you so much. That's all I have for this evening, and I'm excited to pass it back to Kelly for the Q&A.
Thanks, Nico. I love how simple that is. ARC, you can just, throw it in your day.
There you go. Start there.
I was typing my list on a computer, so I'll go back and highlight them later, but what like a powerful yet simple exercise to write them down and figure out who I need to give a call, you know, when you're having a bad day, right?
Yeah, I feel like this is a time where simplicity is truly so powerful because everything is so complex and everything is so big. It's nice to distill things down.
Wonderful. So now we're going to go into, if you have any Q&A for any of our three amazing speakers, feel free to pop them in the Q&A or in the chat, and we will answer them. There might be some I missed. I'll just have a quick look. I have a bunch of thank yous. We love those. But any questions? Okay. We did have one that was already answered about foot cramps.
Oh, right.
Yeah, and rolling your foot on a ball is great. Yes. You answered it.
Helpful. I'd also recommend doing some calf stretches, just because the calf muscle is actually kind of attached to a big ligament that wraps around the bottom of the foot. So if you can stretch out the calf muscle, it might just give you a little bit more mobility in your foot. But the rolling on the ball is fantastic. Yeah.
Well, that'd be a good thing to do while, you know, sitting at home working, like at the dining table. What naturopaths are recommended? Okay, we had some popped into the chat.
Yeah, and I'll take a moment just to shout out the work that the naturopath world is doing. And I think especially when it comes to burnout, each of us is such a unique, you know, being and beast. And the naturopath experience is really, you have this one-on-one person who's going to look at the whole picture, because it's rarely just one thing. You know, work is this huge phenomenon that is really perpetuating burnout and its extensive impact. But each of us are unique in our experience. So the naturopath approach is so powerful in really looking at you as a whole person, and from rest to diet to supplements. It's really incredible. And it was life-changing for me.
It's great. We have a new question. What do you do if you don't feel like you have a champion or someone that supports you for you?
I would still recommend reaching out to like a therapist or a counselor or somewhere you can start. That's just totally your safe space to kind of talk about anything you want and no judgment. And sometimes we just need to kind of rebuild that self-worth and those skills, and just having somebody who's there just for you and who's going to kind of give you some tools to kind of build up your ability to kind of reach out again. So.
Yeah. One of the things I've seen happen a lot too, and I've experienced this, is that sometimes we can actually create this incredible cycle of reciprocity. So if we're missing feeling those champions in our life, I have found, because I've experienced that too, when I am a champion for other people, all of a sudden out of the blue or out of the woodwork, somebody becomes my champion. And I have seen that cycle of reciprocity happen a lot. So sometimes that's it. And, you know, one of the other, we were talking about this in a meeting that I was in recently about when we're feeling that people are not, we don't have that support system or that champion. I love what you said, Carrie, about being able to go to a counselor or to a coach. And I've also found that sometimes when we participate in an activity or a club, I'll give you the example that came to me. A person I know joined a reading club, like a book club. And she said that I feel like I found my peeps. That's what she said to me. And so that feeling of connectedness, and these aren't like lifelong friends, they're new people, but the energy in the conversation felt positive, and I think she feels like these are her new champions. So sometimes it's also about pursuing something that we love, because if other people are doing the same thing and it's in the same group, that may be where we find our champion base.
I love that. Like minds. Okay, I have probably our last question here. I'm finding my burnout is making me feel very turbulent emotionally. Do you have any suggestions to help settle your emotions when they feel like they're getting the better of you?
I'll give you 2 words. First of all, cancel that. So when your emotions are getting the better of you, and sometimes they're happening very quickly, if you tell your brain, it's probably better said quietly in your head than out loud. It will sound weird, but if you say cancel that. I actually used that today. I was feeling a little impacted by something that somebody had said in a meeting. And I found that I wasn't listening as well as I should be, just for a moment, but I was very aware of it. So in my head, I just kept saying, cancel that, cancel that, cancel that. And after 5 times, I was able to kind of refocus. So sometimes when we become aware of the emotion, I didn't want to feel frustrated in that moment. I wanted to feel engaged and participatory. So that allowed me to sort of just put aside the emotion so I could re-engage. And the other thing is to ask yourself, why am I feeling this way in this moment? What is it about that person or the situation that is causing me to feel this way? And then I love what you said, Nico, breathe. Breathe.
I love it. Cancel that.
Carrie, were you going to add something right there?
Yeah, just as like a kind of little break from kind of like feeling a lot. Sometimes for me, I'm such a scent person. Like if I can kind of have like a favorite scent, and sometimes it can be like an essential oil, or even just like lighting like a really lovely candle, something to just kind of like create a little bit of like a different atmosphere, or like a shift. Like for me, actually, Palo Santo is like a great tool just to kind of like, they call it smudging. So that works for me, just as like, just shifting like the energy of a room can kind of shift how you feel. So just finding, and that's just like a little self-care ritual that you can do for yourself if you feel like you're having a hard time switching out of a place.
Yeah, and I wanted to just add that, especially during this time in history, my husband and I frequently do that. Okay, like anyone can disrupt the conversation or the situation, say, okay, what are we thankful for? And just like switch the brain focus to gratitude. And so what I've been trying to do, I've also incorporated the what went well journaling, which I think is very, very common and is talked about, but amazing just how choosing at the end of each day to have a little journal entry about 3 things that went well and why, like unpack them for myself. Because then, as Charmaine says, she does similarly, then the brain is like landing on those positive emotions and that joy or that sense of satisfaction or accomplishment or peace. And as your brain lands there and goes to sleep there, you're more likely to wake up there and start your next day there. So I wanted to offer that as well.
I had a thought I saw some comments in the chat box about that champion, and I'm just going to build on what you were saying, Nico. Something you said a moment ago reminded me of needing to sometimes let people know what it is we need. And so it's one of the hardest things for me to do. But I remember ages and ages ago, I was talking to a friend of mine who, we're in each other's heads. We're that, BFFs. And I remember feeling, wow, I'm feeling like she's kind of not my champion or not being sensitive in the moment. I had made a really big assumption. And then she said to me later, she gave me some really great feedback. She said, Char, just because we've known each other 50 years doesn't mean that I know exactly what you need, think, or feel in the moment. It's kind of like in marriage. And she said, what about if you just tell me what you need? And I remember saying to her once, I just need you to be a champion for me. I'm doing some really important stuff and I feel like I need a champion. Then she said, thank you. Now I know what you need. And I thought, wow, how did I not know that before? So sometimes we just have to really let other people in our life know what we need from in the moment, because we make a lot of assumptions that they should know what we need, think, and feel. And the reality is that those assumptions are usually wrong. So then they do the wrong thing and then it makes it worse.
Oh, great reminder. Thank you. Thanks again to everyone. We're at our time, so we're going to have to say goodbye. But everyone who attended, please give yourself a round of applause for showing up. I know it's hard after everyone's busy days, but really showing up is the first step towards anything, I feel like. So congratulations. And again, a huge, huge thank you to all three of our speakers. Some amazing takeaways for everybody. And if you don't already, please do follow WIL, sign up for our newsletter. We have just launched our registration for our first annual diversity and inclusion forum as well, that you can sign up for online. We have some very exciting stuff coming. So we look forward to seeing some friendly faces again. I hope everyone has a great night and has something in a wine glass, water or wine. Stay hydrated. Cheers to everybody. Thank you again.
Thanks so much.
Thank
Good
you.
night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.